All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the official launch of the 7th edition of UNEP's Global Environment Outlook, the GEO-7. My name is Keisha Rukikaire with UNEP's Communication Division. So today we have about 40 to 45 minutes for this briefing, during which we will hear from our panel and then take some questions. The press conference is in person and also being live streamed on UN Web TV. I'm very glad we have a full room. I'd just like to make it clear that when we get to the Q&A portion, please, questions should be limited to journalists. So on our panel today, we have Mzinga Anderson, who is the Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme. We have Professor Ying Wang, Professor at Tongji University's College of Environmental Science and Engineering and the GEO-7 Assessment Co-Chair. And we also have Sir Bob Watson, former chair of the IPCC and IPBES and a GEO-7 Assessment Co-Chair as well. So without further ado, I will give the floor to UNEP's Executive Director, Ms. Mzinga Anderson, for her observations. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, nearly, to members of the press. You're welcome. Welcome to this launch of the 7th edition of the GEO, the Global Environmental Outlook, which is UNEP's flagship report, which we are very proud to be releasing today during the 7th session of UNEA. At this assembly, the reality is that nations are looking for decisions that advance sustainable solutions for a resilient planet. Essentially, solutions that spark stronger and faster action on climate change, on nature and biodiversity loss, on land degradation and desertification, and on pollution and waste. And the GEO-7 report tells us that these environmental challenges have exacted a heavy toll on the planet, on its people, and on its economies, and are already costing trillions of dollars each year. The GEO-7 also tells us that if we continue powering our economies with fossil fuels, extracting virgin resources, destroying nature, and polluting the environments, the damages will stack up. To give just one example from the report's business as usual scenario, climate change will cut 4% off annual GDP by 2050, claim many lives, and increase forced migration. This should serve as a motivation for nations to follow up on the progress made as UNFCCC COP30 by implementing their current climate pledges and finding ways to strengthen them further. This does not have to be humanity's future, though. The report shows us that we can all stand to gain from investing in a stable climate, from investing in healthy nature and land, and a pollution-free planet. The report makes a very compelling case for a whole-of-society and whole-of-government approach to transform the systems of economy and finance, materials and waste, energy and food, and the environment. Doing so could, by 2050, avoid 9 million pollution-related premature deaths, lift 200 million people out of undernourishment, and move 150 million people out of extreme poverty. Yet, yes, there are some upfront costs, but the avoided damages and the longer-term returns on investments more than make up for the investment needed. The global macroeconomic benefits of this path appear in 2050 and grow to $20 trillion per year by 2070 and will boom thereafter. So taking this path starts with moving beyond GDP as a measure of economic well-being, instead using inclusive indicators that also track human health and natural capital, and continues to transition to circular economic models, a rapid decarbonization and of our energy system, and a shift towards sustainable diet, reduced waste, and improved agricultural practices, and expanding protected areas and restoring degraded ecosystem, all backed by behavioral and social and cultural shifts that includes respects, obviously, for indigenous knowledge and local knowledge. Now, this sounds like, and indeed is, a massive undertaking. But there are no technical reasons why it can't be done. And let us remember that the world has already made so much progress, from the booming renewables industry that we are seeing here in Kenya with 92% renewable in our electricity supply, to the global coverage of protected areas, to the recovery of the ozone layer, to phasing out toxic chemicals, and much, much more. So I call on all nations to build on this progress that they have already made, to follow the transformation pathways laid out in the GEO-7 report, and to drive their economies and societies towards a thriving, sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anderson. Next up, we'll hear from Professor Wang. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Singer Anderson, for those thoughtful remarks, and thank you all for joining us today. As one of the co-chairs of the 7th edition of Global Environment, GEO-7, I'm very excited to see this important report launched today. The GEO-7 report is a scientific assessment of the global environment that demanded collaboration across a wide range of scientific disciplines. A total of 287 scientists from 82 countries contributed with their expertise to this landmark assessment. Together, we have produced a truly holistic assessment that situates environmental challenges within broader social and economic contexts. We translate complex data, information, and knowledge into clear, practical guidance for policymakers. The GEO-7 comes at a pivotal moment for our planet and our humanity. It builds on the decade of global assessment and responds to an urgent reality: the global environment crisis we face, climate change, biodiversity, and land loss, pollution and waste. They are all accelerating, becoming more severe and deeply interconnected. Now, what makes the GEO-7 so unique is its dual focus. First, it provides a rigorous review of the state of our environment in the air, on the land, in the ocean, and fresh waters. And it depicts the interconnected global environmental crisis by drawing on a robust scientific evidence and diverse knowledge, including indigenous and local knowledge. Secondly, and most importantly, it moves beyond mere diagnosis of the situation and offers solution to tackle this crisis. In fact, the GEO-7 report offers integrated and actionable pathways to transform the human systems that drive environmental harm. Systems such as our energies, economics, food, and materials. Moreover, the GEO-7 introduces target-seeking scenarios aligned with global goals and a transformation framework based on the 6 principles and 7 actionable steps. They are designed to help government, business, civil society, and communities accelerate necessary change across the systems. In this regard, it is critical to note that the cost of action is smaller far than the cost of inaction. So, colleagues and friends, our message is very, very simple. Time is running out, but solutions exist. The GEO-7 is here, and it will equip us with the knowledge and tools to act diversely and collaboratively. Now let us seize this opportunity to build a healthier, a more sustainable, a safer, and equitable future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. And now we will have a presentation of the report's main findings from Sir Bob Watson. This should start to appear on the screens at some point. I think so. Oh.
So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. It's a pleasure to be here today to present the key messages. Inga has already done a brilliant summary of the key messages, actually, and Ying also described the process extremely well. So where are we today? Well, it's very clear. We have a global environmental crisis. The Earth's climate is changing, biodiversity is being lost, pollution is increasing, and land is degrading. And these issues are all interconnected and must be addressed together. These issues collectively are undermining human well-being, poverty alleviation, human health, food and water security, and they're causing substantial, as already been said by Inga, substantial economic and social damage. The Earth has already warmed 1.3 degrees Celsius. 1 million species are threatened with extinction, and 100 million hectares of fertile land are lost every year. They're primarily caused by the same reason. It's basically our unsustainable energy and food system within the context of unsustainable economic, finance and governance systems. These issues can no longer be simply thought of as environmental issues. They're economic issues, development issues, security issues, social, moral and ethical issues. And most of the agreed international targets, environmental and social, the SDGs, we are not on a pathway to meet them. One really serious issue is we're close to some very severe climate tipping points. Loss of Greenland ice, loss of West Antarctic ice. If we lose it together, 10 meters of sea level rise. Won't happen tomorrow, but it can happen in the future. The loss of all warm water coral reefs. And you can see there's a whole series of them. We've already warmed 1.3 degrees Celsius, and some of these tipping points are very close to 1.3 degrees Celsius. If we were to achieve the Paris targets, and we're not on a pathway to them, we will pass many of those tipping points. And if the world were to warm 2.4 to 3.9, as we predict it could, we will probably pass nearly all of these tipping, with really severe consequences for life on Earth. One of our other key conclusions was we believe the central estimates of IPCC may be slightly underestimating how bad climate change is. It seems to be accelerating. So we've done scenario modeling. Can we become more sustainable? Yes. It will require unprecedented, integrated, rapid, innovative transformation of our interconnected economic, finance, materials, energy, and food systems. It will require a mixture of behaviour change, technological change, changes in governance. It will, as Inga has already said, need whole of governments. This isn't an issue for environment ministers alone. This is every minister in every government around the world and whole of society. It's not just government. We need the private sector, the banking sector, the NGOs and civil society. And no longer can environmental policies be viewed as environmental policies. They're economic policies, national security policies, and social justice policies. And the time is running out. We need urgent action. And so, we've already heard, Ying has said it, so has Inga. The cost of action is less than the cost of inaction. We do need to make investments now, but in the coming years, those investments will be returned multiple times, potentially up to $20 trillion in 2070, and even more per year thereafter. We basically need efficiency improvements and lifestyle changes. Many countries, the industrialized world, we're a consumer society. We overconsume. We need to transform our energy, food, material, and economic systems. And yes, as we transform them, the price of food and the price of energy might go up, which means we need compensatory mechanisms for the poorest of the poor, so they're not disadvantaged. We can, as we've already heard, get more people out of poverty, and we can reduce premature deaths from pollution. A key point is we need to look at the food, energy, materials and economic system as one integrated system. If we don't transform the economic and finance system, we can never be sustainable in energy, food and in materials. So we need to do this together. We have several levers. We have changes in governance. We need to use our innovation and knowledge. We need to build capacity. And we need to get people to be motivated, not just think about the environment, think about human health, think about equity. And as we've already heard, we need whole of government society working together and many other features that you can read for yourself. It's quite clear there are many options in all 5 of these systems. And as I've said, these 5 systems are interconnected. You can't transform one without thinking the others. In the finance system, we need to internalise the social and environmental costs of damage. We need to repurpose and eliminate environmental subsidies. We need to go beyond GDP, as you've already heard, take into account the value of nature. We also need to, as I say, change our energy system, more efficient use of energy, more use of renewable energy to produce energy in a clean manner. We need to transform our food system, reduce food waste and food loss. We need to think of new innovative things such as innovative ways to produce meat. In other words, innovative proteins from plants and stem cells, not from animals themselves. We need to also make sure that we recognise these things have to be done nationally and regionally within a global context. And obviously, some priorities are similar for all countries, whereas some others are country-specific or regionally specific. We need to take that into account. We need to reflect the economic and ecological realities for each individual country. And as we put our actions together, we need to account for equity and regional differences as well as regional similarities. And we need to deliver the financial aid that developing countries so desperately need to transform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Bob, and thanks to the panel as a whole. We will now move to the Q&A portion of the press conference. As I mentioned, please, questions are limited to members of the media, and when you do ask a question, please state your name and the media outlet you represent. Over there, we have one. I hope we have a roving mic somewhere. David over there, and then Krishna.
Hi, this is Krishna from India. The report identifies plastic pollution as one of the core drivers of the 3 planetary crises. But the UNEP was unable to publish the summary for policymakers. Why was that so? And if the countries are so serious, I mean, how does this report drive the outcome of the GEO-7, do you see? Yeah, thank you.
The SPM looks at all forms of pollution. Plastic pollution, as you say, we look at very carefully, and we look at it in the context also of a circular economy, which is going to be crucial for all materials. Embedding and enhancing our use of the circular economy is absolutely crucial. But it's quite clear plastic waste is having a significant effect on biodiversity and on human health. And so we do bring to attention of policymakers, we need to act on the issue of plastics.
And I think in the previous press conference, I referenced that we are continuing on the plastic negotiations. I was one of the people who argued that we should set a deadline, although it's not a deadline, but aiming to complete the negotiations within the 2-year period. Why? Because it focuses the mind. Had we not done so, we would have had 1 INC per year, which would mean that we would just be about to finish number 3. to the country because of that sense of urgency. We've had 6 negotiations rounds, and we are making progress, and no one has left the table. So the negotiations continue, and we have to understand that other treaties, like Paris, took 21 years. So we are not throwing up our hands to the country. We are putting our shoulders to the wheel, as are other countries. On the issue of how will this impact, how will this report impact, the report entitled A Future We Choose, I think it's a very critical and seminal report that comes out at a moment when countries are at a crossroads in terms of the path that they will take. Therefore, it is certainly UNEP's hope that countries will take this science into account as they plan for their economic, social, and environmental future. Thank you.
Why is there no summary for policymakers? It was also a question.
We have an executive summary that I think summarizes all of the main conclusions of the main report. And I tried to summarize them very briefly, of course, in my presentation. So there is an executive summary with a section called Key Messages that really does present the knowledge to governments, but also to the private sector around the world. And the message also is not just to environment ministers, it is to the energy ministers, the finance ministers, the water ministers, the agricultural ministers. That's why we need whole of government and whole of society. This report is very broad and talks to a lot of potential stakeholders.
Thanks very much. We have another question over there.
My name is David Akana, and I work for Mongo Bay. The release comes at the moment when disinformation is on the rise, greenwashing is on the rise. There are governments who actually are arguing that let's run government based out of common sense. And the question here would be, in terms of the outreach strategy from your end, is the thinking here that the science is going to speak for itself, or maybe you are going to be humble and say you're going to find ways in which you can talk to the Joe Reagans of the U.S., the Sean Hannitys, who make a whole living out of just, maybe, saying other things about these reports. To Professor, to the former IPCC chair, quick question for you. Is there anything that you regret in terms of how you have conducted outreach on all these reports from your time before in the IPCC assessment reports and this global environment outlook? And my last question, if you would just speak briefly about the bright spots of the report, what you really think gives anyone hope, that would be great. Thanks.
I think when you look together at the IPCC reports, over 30 years old now, the IPBES reports and the GEO reports, as long with the International Resource Panel, they tell a very strong statement that we humans are affecting the environment, and they also say there are solutions. I would argue that we've made some progress in climate change. We're seeing far more renewable energy, better use of our energy, and recognise that forests have to be saved, both conserved and restored. We're seeing approaches to move in the right direction on biodiversity and land, but we're not moving fast enough. There is no question about that. We're not on target to meet the internationally agreed standards, but these assessments can only present the knowledge to governments, the knowledge to the private sector, and to society as a whole. We cannot push governments to make choices that, in my opinion, should be self-evident. All we can do through the assessments is keep presenting the case that action is needed, and it is both socially and economically sustainable. So I would say we've made progress in each of these areas, but nowhere near enough. We have to accelerate our transformation of all of these systems.
All right, we have one over here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sharon Muzaki. I'm a journalist from Uganda. I write with Nature Africa. My question is, GEO-7 makes it clear that the technologies and solutions already exist, and the real barriers are political and economic. What is the single most important action governments must agree on at UNEA now, this week, to actually shift from promises to implementation and avoid crossing the climate and environmental tipping points the report warns about?
I'm not sure I fully understood it because I'm getting really old and I've got bad hearing, so I do apologise to all of you. If I understood the question, which I might not, and I apologise, what are some of the most important things we should do now? I would personally argue we have to look at all of the systems together, but unless we transform our economic and finance system, unless we try and get the price of energy, food and materials correct, that take into account the environmental and the social costs, if we continue with these unsustainable subsidies, then we cannot have a sustainable energy system, food system or material. So I would argue we need to work on all of these systems at once together, but it must be driven, in my opinion, by changes in our economic and finances. And we desperately need the private sector to work with governments. And in fact, some of the private sector are ahead of some governments. So we need to look at the whole of society, how do all of these things to move together. We have to go away from short-term decision-making to longer-term decision-making. As we've already said, we need the World Economic Forum, and we quote them, says that half of the world's GDP is partially dependent on nature. We must take into account nature and the value of nature in our decision making. Until we do that, we will have an unsustainable economic system. So I would argue we need to drive this, but there are lots of things we can do in every one of these sectors.
Maybe I'll just add, since the question was UNEA specific. Of course, UNEA doesn't deliver a solution. The UNEA member states scan the horizons and say, what is it that right now we need to pay attention to? And as you know, there are 15 resolutions in the hopper and are being negotiated as we speak. I invite you to look at them because each one of them touches upon what elements of what this GEO report speaks to. There is a resolution that speaks to deep sea and understanding our deep seas better. There is a resolution that speaks to glaciers and what is happening to our glaciers. There's a resolution that speaks to fires and the greater intensity and frequency with which we are seeing it. There's a resolution that speaks to mining and metals and extraction writ large. And each one of these you will find, and I could go on, but each one of these sort of rhymes with the elements of the solution spaces that are highlighted in the GEO report. That's why and of course we could go back and look at previous UNEA resolutions that have also highlighted elements. And the reality is that on certain areas, member states have taken action. There was it was a Governing Council resolution that spoke to the dangers around mercury. What happened next was that the world came together, established a convention that is now phasing out mercury, which is why when you go to the dentist today, you will not get mercury in your teeth, or it's being phased out of batteries and light bulbs, etc. These things work. Is it easy? No. Does it take time? Yes. Is it the right way forward? Yes. This is why these solutions in this report matter. Now, we cannot force governments to take it up, as Sir Bob Watson just said, but certainly they are there for the following and for the taking.
Yeah, and I think transformation is very highly desired for every sectors, not only government, but also private sectors and industries. We need to change the linear economic systems to a circular economic systems. And as Bob mentioned in his presentation, we need integrated systems, including different systems we have at present, that energy, materials, food, and materials. So we need also a transformed evaluation mechanisms, not only relied on the GDP, but also a new evaluation systems, we call it a GDP plus GEP, and plus any other elements we need to fully assessment of what we cost for the development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a couple more. Helen over here.
Thank you so much.
Vivian, sorry.
Yeah. Vivian Chinwe, Climate Home News. So the report also did talk about the social sustainability of critical mineral value chains. And the press conference that happened just before this one, where the major groups talked about what's happening, someone in the panel said that, wordings on rights, human rights, workers' rights are being taken down and taken out, and that currently none of the resolutions has any wording on human rights and workers' rights. So how does this report help to move things forward on the resolution to help us get that and have that, in the implementation or in the resolution rather? That's one. Then secondly, looking at the geopolitics of things, would you say that the breakdown in multilateralism might affect, I'm just going to get my questions right, because yesterday in most of the interviews that I had, I've heard experts say that even at this UNE, there's more geopolitics happening than, a focus on the science. So what are you going to say about this and how that could affect the resolutions that will come out of this conference? And would you say that this is being affected by what we're seeing globally with multilateralism, the US moving away and, all of that that's happening globally? Thank you.
On the issue of rights, of course, there is another forum that deals with human rights. That's the Human Rights Commission, and based in Geneva. However, what we take note of is that the General Assembly of the United Nations 2 years ago gabbled the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. And that was a fundamental new right that was established, and one that UNEP references in the medium-term strategy that is before member states for their discussion. Now, on the issue of multilateralism, we are pleased to say that there are some 170, I speak under the control of my colleagues, countries present here. Over 170, including the large country that you just referenced. And so we very much expect that multilateralism, yes, is it turbulent waters? Yes. Does that mean that we walk away from the science, that what it tells us, and the policies, therefore, that must follow that science? No. We, UNEP, are a norms-based agency that also works in implementation. Our program is around $3 billion over a 2-year period, and we work at the request of member states precisely to support them. The science tells us this, the policies are that, this is what country X would like us to support them with, precisely to create those sustainable pathways. We have also seen this year significant progress in the multilateral space, as well as some hiccups, right? So we celebrate the gaveling and the going into force of the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Treaty. We celebrate that we managed to create the triplet so that we now have a trifecta of science policy panels, one dealing with climate, one dealing with biodiversity and land and desertification, etc., and one dealing with pollution, waste, and chemicals. This is very critical, and that was negotiated this year. So we stay steady because we are the United Nations. And as such, therefore, we have a mandate given to us, which means speaking to science and working to what science can do for policy. At the end of the day, as my two eminent scientists here said, it is up to governments to decide to follow that. Thankfully, many governments are. And the private sector certainly also is, using the price of the renewables dropping and becoming more competitive. Now, utility-based solar or wind is between 3 to 4 cents per kilowatt hour, hydrocarbons 10 cents. So therefore, we are seeing that progress march simply because it is cheaper and more economical, as well as the right thing to do. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Aliza Khalid from Pakistan. I'm a journalist, and I have a question that in the last 3 years we have seen a lot of conflicts, and there is...
Sorry, what media outlet?
Lok Sajak. Lok Sajak.
Thank you so much.
Okay. In the last few years, we have seen a lot of conflicts, and conflicts have a carbon cost as well. Do you think with the current political instability and so many nations at odds with each other and going wars openly, we would be able to move forward? And is there something UN is doing about the wars and the political instability and the countries that are at odds?
You may have seen that, and you may be aware that UNEP has a mandate that includes making assessment of the environmental consequences of war, conflict, and disasters. This is based on 3 resolutions that have been taken at UNEA 2, UNEA 4, and UNEA 5. Accordingly, just in the past few years, we've issued some 25 such assessments: Sudan, Ukraine, Gaza, Haiti, and then we can go back into time and look at the Balkans and the Gulf and many, many other places, in addition to what we do related to disasters. We are very proud to have a team that is usually on the ground after a disaster within 24 to 48 hours, be it the port explosion in Beirut, be it the polymer spill off of Sri Lanka, or be it the oil spill off of Mauritius, or be it the refinery that was impacted by a tsunami in Lima. So this is what we do. Now, on the issue of carbon cost of conflict, I think it's self-evident. We do not yet have the skills to calculate that. But what we do understand is that the cumulative effects, not just of carbon, but also of other chemicals, whether they go into the atmosphere or whether they come back down to the soils, are impactful. And so some of our assessments indeed do look at that. And of course, I therefore echo the Secretary General as he repeatedly calls for peace and ceasefires to the conflicts that exist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no more hands, so we shall... Oh, there's one hand.
Thank you. I have a short question.
Sorry, are you a member of the media?
Yeah.
Could you please introduce yourself and your media outlet?
I'm from Austria, and I work in the Ministry of Environment. My question is there anything...
I'm so sorry, but it is a press conference. We'll have to limit the questions to members of the media.
My question is there anything about birth control or population growth in the report? If everybody is invited, everybody should have the right to speak. Thank you.
We point out that what drives change, and it is a combination, obviously, of the number of people on this planet. It's a amount of their wealth, how much can they afford to buy, and a choice of lifestyle. So what's driving the changes is an increasing population, an increasing wealthier population, and the choice of lifestyle, especially in industrialized countries. So while we don't explicitly discuss in detail birth control, we do talk about the implications of changes in population on the pressure on the planet. So we look at a range of different population projections and say what the implications of those projections are. But we don't have a specific discussion, let's say, around the Cairo conference that talked about the empowerment of women, the education of girls, culturally acceptable forms of contraception. But we effectively recognise they're all the issues that are behind the issue of population. Our projections show, and it's consistent with all the UN projections, that population will increase, maybe plateau 2050, 2100. And there's some scenarios that do show population going down after 2050. So the issue of birth control is important. It has to be put into the context of different societies.
Maybe just finally to say that since this leans right up against UN Women mandate and UNFPA mandate, that we as the United Nations stands for agency of the girl child, agency of the woman, and full rights to make her own decisions. And therefore, we also see, as Bob said, the better, the more the women have access to education and to the labor market, we see that as often very much as a direct function to the number of children she chooses to have. With that, we hand it back to Keisha.
Thank you very much. One more here, a natural journalist, I hope. Thanks.
Thank you so much. My name is Lily Njero, Nation Media Group, here in Nairobi, Kenya. This is a follow-up to a question that had been asked earlier. Now, the conversations that we've been having with experts here, some of them say that with the situation, with the geopolitics and break in multilateralism, is that countries are now much more emboldened to push their personal interests instead, even at this UNEA, instead of working together. Is this the case, and what can you say about that? Thank you.
Multilateralism is thankfully alive and well, and I think we have seen waves of different engagements depending on how the geopolitical settings has been. I take you back to the 50s and 60s, where there were some fairly high waves in the multilateral agencies, even if UNEP did not exist at that time. So I think often those waves will emerge from geopolitical complexities into the halls of multilateralism. Having said that, though, what gives me determination and hope is that all countries are here, engaged. You may not be here, but when you are here at 10 p.m., they're still negotiating hard, looking at finding solutions. Yes, there's still lots of brackets, but clearly there is a determination to find a way forward, and it's not over till Friday when the gavel goes down, and so we will continue to push for exactly those solutions that we know are right for people and for planet.
Thank you. So with that, I think we're out of time. I'll just make one quick announcement. There is a side event on the GEO in conference room 1 at 1:45 p.m. where you'll have, I'm sure, more opportunity to ask questions. I'd like to end by thanking our panelists and for lending us their expertise, and our media colleagues, and indeed one non-media colleague for engaging. Thanks very much, everyone. Have an awesome day. Cheers.